Embrace the shadow.
Greetings, survivors. I know I'm a little late on this and must apologize. I've had a lot of stuff going on in the past few months and it's not looking like it's stopping, so there will be delays on stuff. So I was thinking, with the hype for Black Ops 4, we should get a quick rundown for the zombie storyline we all know and love. Keeping in mind this will be a two-part video. This is part 1, which will focus on the journeys of Ultimus and Victus without the influence of Primus or Black Ops 3, although it will include Mob of the Dead, Origins, and some influences that Primus had on their past. So without further ado, let's begin on the storyline. So in the beginning, there was the Ether and the Keepers. Among the Keepers were two beings who were known by many names, though we currently know them only as Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man. Some of the Keepers began to experiment with the Dark Ether, which resulted in them turning into apothecons due to horrible experiments. The other Keepers then exiled them into the Dark Ether which they were experimenting on, to never return to Argotha. Among them was the Shadow Man. The apothecons refused to leave, and they fought back, resulting in the Great War between them and the Keepers and the humans, including Primus, to fight along with the Keepers. The war started in the beginning of the 13th century, and the war ended on December 31st in 1299. Humanity, working with Primus and the Keepers, defeat the apothecons, who are then imprisoned in the Dark Ether for all of eternity. However, they continue to send Element 115 through the temporal rifts and land them on the Earth in hopes the human will use it and wage war upon themselves using the powers of Element 115, resulting in freeing the apothecons from their eternal prison. The very next day, on January 1st of 1301, Primus completely disappears from all of history after telling the Wolf King to begin building Dreisendrache. The Wolf King does so on their order, and then later that year, he dies of sickness. His servant, Arthur, is told to scatter his bones around Dreisendrache, burying them around the castle. Arthur does so. A temporal rift then appears, taking Arthur to Resolution 1295 in the year 2015. And that is it for the prologue of the story. We then have the 20th century, the events of the World at War game and Black Ops 1. A meteorite with element 115 is discovered near the Tunguska River. Dr. Ludwig Maxis is sent there to investigate. He later forms Group 935 as an internal organization dedicated to the study of element 115 that he found on that meteorite. 3 years later, Ludwig Maxis has a daughter named Samantha. Her mother dies unfortunately of childbirth. He continues working with Group 935, often taking his daughter to work to keep her safe with him. He later invites Dr. Edward Richthofen to join Group 935. Richthofen accepts, acting on behalf of the Illuminati's interests. Japan then discovers another meteorite containing 115 in a swamp in their territory. They form the research group Division 9 to oversee the Rising Sun facility built upon Element 115's research. America soon discovers their own meteorite at Groom Lake later that same year. Maxis and Richthofen soon start working on their teleporters. They don't seem to work as the subjects do teleport, though their chemical composition is altered, leaving them catatonic and changed. They later discover Element 115 can resurrect one of the corpses from it. At first, it obeys their commands, but soon it becomes rabid, attacking them, and they kill it in self-defense. Richthofen also starts working on his own invention, the Wunderwaffe DG2. During a trial test, he and Dr. Schuster also managed to teleport a walnut with no change in its physical form. Maxis, however, is not impressed and reveals to Richthofen they are now being funded by the Reichstag and need to focus on warfare-based research, so the teleporters are a waste of time. Richthofen and Schuster continue working on it behind Maxis' back. They later conduct their first human teleportation test. Richthofen volunteers to do it, however, he does not teleport to the receiving pad, but rather he teleports to the moon, where he encounters the MPD, an ether pyramid device hidden by the apothecons. While inspecting the interesting device, he gets shocked from it. He then becomes schizophrenic and begins hearing the voices of apothecons, including that of the Shadow Man. He is then teleported to Shangri-La, where he learns of Argotha. He is now driven by the voices in his head and begins to become corrupted by the dark ether, getting driven insane with an obsession over finding. While he is there, he is worshipped by the natives and encounters the focusing stone. After a month of absence, he finds his way back to Schuster with a plan to build Griffin Station on the moon, around the MPD. He also leaves the Illuminati at this point. Frustrated with Maxis turning over to Germany, he gets many other group members of Group 935 in on joining Griffin Station. Axis gets Germany to let Group 935 in on the Kino facility and the Asylum facility for more experiments. They also get a hold of the Rising Sun facility from Japan, where Division 9 remains to watch over them, as well as the Eagle's Nest in Dreisendrache. Maxis, however, later finds a dog and gives her to Samantha. He names her Fluffy, warning Samantha to be careful, as she is pregnant. Richthofen finishes the Wunderwaffe DG-2 prototype and declares Dr. Groff the lead scientist of Griffin Station, as he returns to Earth to continue the charade with Maxis until he is no longer needed. Groff and Schuster are left to discover how to power the MPD. Maxis later develops the ray gun at the Rising Sun facility. Dr. Porter then begins working on the second generation for the ray gun. As a result of Kino messing around with the temporal rifts, Dr. Monty gives small nudges, giving the group the ideas for 4 elixirs known as Juggernog, Quick Revive, Speed Cola, and Double Tap, as well as the Pack-a-Punch machine. Dr. Groff later discovers how to power the MPD when he kills a rat that snuck into the station. The tank suddenly starts filling, charging the device. He reports this to Richthofen, who then begins sending soldiers and scientists from Group 935 to be sacrificed for the MPD. Griffin Station then develops their own Perca-Cola, being Mule Kick, and Richthofen also comes up with the Monkey Bomb. Maxis starts to become worried and concerned over Richthofen from his behavior and his recent invention, believing Element 115 to be impacting his behavior. He also worries that he and his assistant Sophia have gotten too close. Maxis reports success with Subject 26, whose violent outbursts have been greatly reduced. Maxis believes they have found how to control the dead. Subject 26, however, is killed after he randomly attacks a handler. Sophia is attacked from that outburst. Maxis describes it as another setback. He then, when he finds out she was attacked, ends up killing her, but sealing her brain inside of a computer. Nikolai, Takio, and a Mexican are also now delivered to Richthofen to experiment with, though Richthofen ends up killing the Mexican. Around the same time, he gets Dempsey to replace him. He reports that Dempsey's intellect is low. Takio is staring at the floor, muttering to himself about the Emperor, and Nikolai seems to be reacting to vodka. He notes that their minds are almost entirely broken, with no memory of who they once were. Maxis later returns to Doris, ordering Richthofen to do the same, so that they may continue working on the teleporters again. Richthofen returns, bringing along Takio, Nikolai, Dempsey, and Samantha. Richthofen gets pissed, though, when he finds out that Maxis is not planning to produce the Wunderwaffe DG-2 like he said he would, and he vows to proceed with his plans. Later, Groff informs Richthofen the MPD is now fueled. With his plan fully ready to go, he sees this as his chance to turn on Maxis. Richthofen and Maxis later that day are using the teleporter prototype on Fluffy to test if it can work. The dog disappears, but then does not come back. A few minutes later, she suddenly reappears in the teleporter, though she is now a hellhound. Samantha suddenly appears charging through the door. When she sees Fluffy, she immediately runs to her, trying to figure out what happened. Maxis chases after her, but he is too late. He goes into the teleporter with her. Richthofen immediately shuts the door, trapping Maxis, Samantha, and Fluffy in the teleporter as he then activates it. The three of them are teleported to different coordinates. Samantha ends up on Griffin Station. Maxis ends up in Resolution 1295, where he somehow begins to learn the power to merge with electricity. Fluffy goes into the ether, where she stays as she waits to give birth to a new breed of hellhounds. Samantha, now scared on the moon and confused, runs through everyone into the MPD that they just finally had opened. The MPD then closes behind her as it sends her to Argartha, where she remains. She now has control of the zombies, though she is scared and confused and doesn't know what is going on. Maxis then eventually gets captured by Richtofen's followers, and he gets brought to Griffin Station. Richtofen orders him to tell Samantha to come out. He tries to, but then he suddenly tells Samantha to kill them all, as he kills himself, and he merges with the technology of Griffin Station, being able to merge with electricity. Samantha, seeing him die, then unleashes all the undead onto the base. Richtofen escapes to Deriz, where he awakens Dempsey, Takio, and Nikolai. The four of them join to try to live through the zombies' onslaught, becoming known as Ultimus. They escape Deriz to Shinonuma to recover Richtofen's diary. Upon reading it, Richtofen then forms his plan to defeat Samantha. Ultimus returns to Deriz and plans to use the teleporter to return to the moon. However, Richtofen's plan backfires when the Wunderwaffe DG2 overloads the teleporter and sends them through time, causing him to drop his diary along the way. The Group 935 is then disbanded as all of their bases are overrun with zombies. As they disband, many of their workers and scientists are picked up by Soviet Union and the United States. Ultimus then ends up teleporting to Kino der Toten much later in time. This causes temporal rifts across the dimensions. Monty then feels obligated to step in and begins to make changes in the background across time, thus giving the nudges for the perk machines and drawing gun markings on the wall. Ultimus then finds a lunar lander at Kino, which they use to go to the Ascension facility, the Soviet Union's research base. Samantha slowly takes control of the Ascension facility along the way, taking full control over Yuri's mind, while Gersh gets imprisoned in the Casimir mechanism by Yuri. Ultimus arrives years later to an Ascension facility that is fully overrun with zombies at this point. They release Gersh, who now maintains his new ethereal form, and he sends Ultimus through another rift once Richtofen finds his journal. While this is taking place, Samantha is also attacking the Pentagon in an effort to thwart the meeting over the Cuban Missile Crisis. She sends Yuri there as well to steal their weapons and take away their defenses. In the end, however, all four manage to survive. In an effort to avoid such a zombie outbreak from happening again, the US government creates the Broken Arrow program, establishing several facilities across the country. Russman begins working at the Broken Arrow facility, though over the course of his employment, his extensive exposure to 115 leads to huge memory loss, like Dory from Finding Nemo level. The group does experiments involving animals using a shard of 115, creating the bios. This later leads to a containment breach with bios running amok. Russman is one of the few to make it out alive. The facility is abandoned. Victus later arrives back there through a rift, grabbing the same shard of 115, and then they leave again through another rift, being chased by an undead Richtofen. So this is the future Victus coming in through another temporal rift through time. Ultimus later appears from the rift in a Siberian facility in the year 2011, where they find themselves trapped in a closet, where George Romero is filming a zombies movie based on the Group 935's files that he had found. Samantha releases the Horde there on the film crew, who now have to help Richtofen find the ancient Vril device, a device from the Keepers. Richtofen teleports himself and his crew out again, this time to Shangri-La, to get the last item needed to defeat Samantha, the Focusing Stone. However, the film crew dies as he leaves. There, Ultimus grabs the Focusing Stone, and then they leave for Area 51. Here, they use one of their teleporters at Area 51 to get to Griffin Station. Using the Vril device and the focusing stone, Richtofen swaps bodies with Samantha, giving him control over the zombies and the ether. Maxis, however, is now alive again with the station's power turned back on. He begs Ultimus crew to launch the missiles at the Earth to sever Richthofen's connection with the ether. However, hitting the Earth, it destroys most of the Earth's life and spreads the 115 and zombies infection everywhere around the globe. In a now post-zombie apocalyptic world, a society of survivors who eat the undead became the flesh. Samuel Stuhlinger is among them. By eating the zombies, they start to hear the voice of Richtofen. He talks to them, gets them to build global polarization devices to fix the rift in time and space, and acquire himself full control over the ether. Maxis also begins to talk to survivors, talking them into building the same devices, but for him, so he can open Argotha and reunite with Samantha, even though that would result in destroying the Earth. A battle breaks out between followers on both sides, resulting in death and slaughter, and neither side survives the battle. Neither Richtofen nor Maxis can get the full control in the end. One of the flesh, however, being Samuel, escapes from the fight. Samuel then bumps into Russman, who had escaped from the zombie horde by stealing one of the Broken Arrow's buses. They then later run into Marlton and Misty. The four of them then become known as Victus. Maxis then talks them into completing the polarization device there in his favor over Richtofen's. Samuel tries to talk them into Richtofen's side, but they don't believe him. Richtofen then teleports them to Province 22, where he demands Samuel to activate the second device on his side this time. But again, the crew unfortunately sides with Maxis. Both Maxis and Richtofen are not heard from again for some time, leaving Victus to wander the Earth. 2 months later, Victus arrives at an old western town beneath a mining facility in Angela. They meet Arthur there, having been sent there through the rift, and now confused as to where and when he is. He tries to help them. The voice of Maxis and Richtofen now return again. They just side with the Maxis voice. And thus ends the events of the Victus crew and Ultimus crew. Now all we have left is Origins and Mob of the Dead, as they are completely separate storylines starting from scratch. So the first one we will talk about here is Mob of the Dead. Sal DeLuca opens multiple gambling houses across all of Chicago, thus begins his reign of the DeLuca crime family. Billy Handsome joins him in on this as a hitman. Finn O'Leary joins as well as an expert in gambling and rigging sporting events. Finn is married to Angela Bow. Sal, however, ends up running out of options and has to start working with Al Arlington, also known as the Weasel. He's an associate in LA known for being a master schemer and bank robber. Finn refuses Angela's divorce papers, so she reveals his past as a criminal, gets him thrown into Alcatraz. Al wakes up in a hospital after an LA heist has gone wrong. He uses this time to write a comic book, his third comic book that gets denied. Sal, frustrated by his emperor collapsing, kills a prostitute. Police, no longer willing to turn a blind eye, arrest him. Billy gets arrested as well for multiple homicides. Al, now in the hospital, gets arrested as well for his role in the LA heist. The four of them are sent to Alcatraz one at a time, and there, Al, or the Weasel, talks the others into a plan of his that ends up flying away on a handmade plane. The other three, over months, get impatient, and when they realize there is no real plan being taken into action or set up, they take Al to the roof of the prison and kill him. The three are then sent to death by electric chair. However, their pain is not over. They then go to Purgatory, where they are stuck attempting the same plan that the Weasel had originally made. And anytime they die, they restart the whole plan from the beginning with no recollection of any of their previous attempts in a permanent time loop. However, Al writes it in his journal, and eventually, from reading his journal after the memory losses, he realizes what he must do. He turns on the other three later on and kills the three of them, thus breaking the cycle of them turning on him. Then we don't know what happens when he breaks the cycle. We don't know if he is still in purgatory or the four are now in normal, just hell or afterlife or something. But we know the cycle is broken, and for all we know, Al is now on the real world and just living his life. And then we have the premise universe. Oh man, this is where everything gets fun and confusing. I feel like I have to do a whole separate video from this point on, as it has a lot of twists and turns. So let's finish this video here and save that for the next video. I hope this helped you all to catch up, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when the next part of the timeline is up, and I'll see you then.